An eventful dawn at Silbury Hill. Similar to the alien-esque sightings with Sheriff Herbert Shermer, another police officer would have an alien-like encounter. Silbury Hill, which is located in England within the Wiltshire county of Avebury, is not exactly a stranger to the extraordinary. In fact, it has been somewhat of a hotspot over time for UFO connoisseurs and people fascinated by the prospect of extraterrestrial life and supernatural happenings. It is, as its name suggests, a hill, but rather a large one, standing at 131 feet in stature and erected by mankind. The exact reasoning behind it being built is not known, but that does not stop people from entertaining different possibilities, some of which have gone to the extent of hypothesizing that it holds some type of magical element or confines a hidden treasure within. In the summer of 2009, an anonymous police officer who happened to be off duty at the time was cruising along the A4 highway, which happens to give a decent view of the ambiguous Silbury Hill. It was early morning around dawn when he noticed a crop circle. A crop circle is a term used to describe flattened crops that form some type of shape. What struck the officer as odd was that the crop circle appeared to be fresh. However, that was not the weirdest aspect of it all. The officer realized he apparently was not the only one taking notice of said crop circle. He recalled that there were 3 noticeably tall figures, cloaked in white with their faces hidden from view, and they seemed to have long, blonde hair. Initially, the officer did not think too much of these figures at first, dismissing them as investigators conducting a forensic investigation of some sort. However, as he got closer, he noticed a loud and obnoxious buzzing sound that was audibly impossible to ignore. The figures seemed entirely unbothered by it, however. The officer continued to come closer and even made the daring move of trying to catch their attention by calling out to them, to which he received no notice or response. The officer noted that something strange seemed to be happening from within the crop circle. Not only did the strange buzzing sound seem to stem from within it, but the crops within the crop circle seemed to be moving as if being blown by wind, despite the fact that there was no noticeable wind in the atmosphere. Everything aside from the crop circle was perfectly still, which further suggests that the crop circle must have been moving due to a factor other than wind, perhaps an engine of some sort. The officer decided to make a second daring move of running towards the figures, to which they did seem to take notice, saying that their heads rear towards him before bolting off at an alarmingly supernatural speed. After they disappeared, the buzzing sound was still very much present. That is precisely when the officer got cold feet and decided to return to his vehicle for safety. Similar to Shermer's case, the officer at Silbury Hill experienced an excruciating headache for the whole day after his bizarre encounter. The officer submitted a report to his department. However, due to the fact that he had been off duty at the time of the occurrence, there was no investigations into his claims. Although there were no other witnesses besides the officer himself, or at least none that have come forward, strangely enough, there were other uncanny accounts from people who had noticed an odd black helicopter hovering in precisely the same location. It is not exactly the same as a witness account, but what are the odds of a strange, unmarked helicopter being at the same spot? Is it pure coincidence, or perhaps a subtle confirmation of the officer's extraordinary encounter? The underground city of Aztlan. Aztlan is the fabled ancestral home of the Aztecs. The location of Aztlan is thought to have been in northwestern Mexico or the southwest US, but it is unknown if Aztlan was ever a real place or a mythical land of fables. Legend states that 7 tribes lived in the underground caves of Aztlan. Some claims of Aztlan contradict each other. Sometimes it is painted as a paradise. Other times it is said that Aztlan was ruled by a tyrant named Azteca Chicomostoca. It is believed their priest led the Aztecs out of Aztlan and to the Valley of Mexico. Aztlan may be a fabricated world such as Camelot or Atlantis, as no physical proof of its existence has ever been found. Nevertheless, just like Atlantis, there are believers in the claim of its authenticity. Searches for this mystic land have been conducted all the way from Mexico to Utah, but have been fruitless. Though never physically identified, Aztlan is described in ancient legends as a long-lost secret island, further cementing its connection with the mystery of Atlantis in the eyes of theorists, though rather than being an island in the traditional sense, it is depicted as being an island on top of a lake. But because of the links it has to Atlantis, however limited, there are some people who argue that they were one and the same. The search for Aztlan and Atlantis is a search for the same exact location with merely two alternative names, though this has been heavily disputed as the legend of Aztlan and the legend of Atlantis originated in different places and seem to be different cities entirely. There is a common belief that perhaps the Aztecs were not originally people stemming from Mexican lands, but came from what is now known as the Western United States, and that they migrated down to the Valley of Mexico, settling there in due time. When it comes to finding Aztlan, there are three main issues that must be addressed. First, there is the problem of stretching the Aztec civilization. Most likely would not have migrated directly from Aztlan to the Valley of Mexico, assuming there were other settlements and places they moved to during that stretch of time. As such, they would most likely have zigzagged around the continent. As such, finding the exact traces of where they went and the journey, they made it near impossible to accomplish and may always leave us with missing pieces in the puzzle. Secondly, layering. Theories suggest there would have been multiple migrations from north to south, so the travels would have layered over each other. Lastly, folding. Links to the aforementioned layering. They would have travelled from north to south and south to north continuously. As such, the potential of following in their archaeological footsteps is currently merely a fantasy. But who knows? Perhaps we will uncover the secrets of the Aztecs in their entirety someday. The Winchester House Secret Room. Winchester House has been a mystery in the making for over a century, built over the course of 38 years, with construction beginning in 1884, though the tales and eeriness linger even today. It took nearly 4 decades to create this masterpiece of a historical building, which is known today for its labyrinth of corridors and rooms. It's no wonder some of them hold rather dark stories. You might think our story begins in 1906, with the tale of an earthquake, an attic, and an heiress, and whilst this is the most famous story behind the ongoings at Winchester, the history has a sad and deep truth leading up to this. Sarah Winchester, who commissioned the house, lost her daughter in 1866, just 4 years into her marriage. This loss was shortly followed by the death of her father-in-law in 1880, and then her husband in 1881, just 1 year after. With so many consecutive tragedies, Sarah became convinced she was cursed. She had a life riddled with paranoia and turned to a medium to help find answers, solutions, and explanations. Perhaps not the one she had hoped to hear, Sarah was told that for each life that had been taken by a Winchester rifle, their spirit would return as a ghost to haunt not only the house, but also Sarah and her family. According to some, such as the Smithsonian Magazine, the medium advised that Sarah should move out to California, where the Winchester House now stands. The medium allegedly also told Sarah to begin to build a home that would satisfy these spirits, ghosts, and ghouls, and alleviate the family curse. Heeding this warning, Sarah left Connecticut behind and began building in 1884 in California. Some speculate that the construction crews worked for 24 hours a day, every day of the week, until Sarah's death in 1922. This supposed fact has since been debunked by historian Mary Jo Ignoffo, who stated to California Home Design that Winchester's own letters explain that she sent workers away for months at a time. This staggered and strange design process, whether that is continuous labour or months of inactivity, has certainly led to a bizarre set of architectural features within this house, with staircases that lead to nowhere, doors with nothing behind, windows that overlook rooms, and the seemingly endless maze design. The house reached a staggering 7 stories before an earthquake in 1906 knocked the highest 3 down. Many modern-day visitors have guessed that the confusing, maze-like design was intentional, a way to mislead the ghosts and deter them. Perhaps Sarah hadn't heard they could walk through walls. Then again, our more level-headed historian, Ignofo, concluded that the random doors and staircases that we can see today were simply quick fixes to seal off the damage this landmark had seen as a result of the earthquake. During the 1906 earthquake, Sarah became trapped inside the attic room, stuck listening to the winds raging outside. Sarah concluded that the spirits were angry, prompting the earthquake as a symbol of their discontent, and her short time in captivity was a form of punishment. She boarded up the attic she had become trapped in and never entered it again. This room remained hidden away for over a century. Before 2016, descriptions of the house detailed 40 staircases, 2,000 doors, 47 fireplaces, and upwards of 10,000 windows. It wasn't until 2016, however, that the attic room was stumbled across, despite the lengths of this house being stumbled through countless times. This brought the room count up to a staggering 161. Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. When multiple women go missing from the same general area, police immediately begin to suspect a serial maniac and start hunting for clues that might lead them to the bodies. However, the disappearances of 8 girls within an 80-mile radius of Dublin, Ireland were so mysterious and strange, with no bodies or crime scenes ever found, that police were never able to determine what had happened to the women, causing the area to be dubbed the Vanishing Triangle, after the similarly mysterious Bermuda Triangle, due to the fact that it really appeared as though the girls had simply vanished from the face of the earth. Annie McCarrick, Eva Brennan, Imelda Keenan, Jojo Dullard, Ciara Breen, Fiona Pender, Fiona Sinnott, and Deirdre Jacob all went missing around Dublin between 1993 and 1998, and police were never able to find any conclusive evidence that foul play had occurred, or even a rational explanation as to what had happened. Many girls disappear as they walk through busy streets, and Deirdre Jacob was confirmed to have been seen mere yards from her parents' house, although she never arrived. However, there have been signs that pointed to something more menacing than a simple Bermuda Triangle phenomenon. A small wooden cross with Fiona Pender's name on it was discovered near the Slieve Bloom Mountains in 2008, leading some to believe that she was buried somewhere nearby. Fiona Sinnott's personal belongings were missing from her apartment and were later found in trash bags dumped in a farmer's field, as though whoever put them there wanted to create the appearance that Fiona had left intentionally. Convicted criminal Larry Murphy also lived in the vicinity of several of the girls' last known locations, but police were never able to connect him to the disappearances, although it is still widely thought that he had something to do with at least a few of the cases. The similarity of the cases also points to a serial maniac, as all of the women were young and mysteriously vanished, indicating that if they were abducted, that the attacker likely used the same methods. However, over 2 decades later, there have still been no clues that can help answer questions about the tragic and mysterious disappearances that left families with no closure or answers about their loved ones, and no justice for the 8 girls who were never found. The mystery of the USS Scorpion. The USS Scorpion was a United States nuclear-powered submarine that launched at the end of 1959. Part of the Skipjack class, a group of submarines with a new teardrop hull and reactor, it began its service with the US Navy in 1960. It mysteriously went missing on the 22nd of May 1968 in the Atlantic Ocean, along with its 99 crew members. Interestingly enough, 3 other submarines disappeared that year from the French, Israeli, and Soviet navies. The Scorpion began its career with a 2-month deployment to Europe from Connecticut in August 1960. It returned within a few months and then spent the next 2 years training along the eastern US coast. The crew specialized in developing and practicing warfare tactics for nuclear submarines. They practiced in the waters near the US, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, both as attacker and defender. The Navy sent the Scorpion on a transatlantic patrol in 1964 and a European patrol in 1965. The officers and commanders were praised and earned awards for their merit and achievements. In 1967, the Scorpion was supposed to receive a thorough overhaul. It was to undergo testing and repairs to determine all of its programs functioning. The Sub-Safe Quality Assurance Program demands an intensive research period that can span for months. However, this was at the height of the Cold War, so there was pressure to cut corners and pass subpar equipment because the Navy feared removing a nuclear submarine out of their waters for too long. Despite its equipment long overdue for repairs and corrections, they reduced the overhaul time and waived their essential requirements to send it back to sea. The Scorpion soon after travelled to the Mediterranean but suffered a few problems with its electrical and refrigeration systems. Now 1968, it was leaving Spain to head home when the Navy ordered it to travel towards Soviet vessels in the Atlantic. It was tasked with merely observing the Soviets' activities and reporting back, as they had a guided missile destroyer and 2 fast nuclear hunter submarines. From midnight 20th of May 1968 to the following midnight of the 21st, the Scorpion attempted to radio their naval station in Spain. The message failed to get through and reached a post in Greece instead, who then forwarded it. It was short, only stating that they were nearing the Soviet vessels at 110 meters and conducting surveillance before heading back to Virginia. The submarine never made it back home and was reported late 6 days after the message. The Navy sent out searches but declared it lost within a month. There were accusations that the Navy had set out on covert investigations the day before it was even supposed to arrive, having prior knowledge of its circumstances, which they vehemently denied. 5 months after its disappearance, search teams discovered sections of the USS Scorpion on the Atlantic seabed at 3,000 meters, about 740 kilometers southwest of the islands where the Soviets were training. The Navy revealed that they possessed sound recordings of the ship sinking from their underwater listening devices. Although they could hear its destruction, they were not able to conclude why it occurred. There are currently many theories, the most popular one being a hydrogen explosion from changes in ventilation while going to periscope depth. Others include accidentally activating a defective torpedo that struck its own vessel, a torpedo exploding while still inside its case, or a Soviet attack. The Navy's investigations are inconclusive, but they repeatedly visit the Scorpion to measure and observe any uranium leaking and consequent environmental impacts. But what do you make of these discoveries? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.